Welcome to the Rant Live. Welcome to the show, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on Wednesday, October 26th.
Woohoo!
It's, Halloween is on Monday, and we were just talking about weather, but this, like, October to me, living in Arizona, is such a great month because it's finally not 115 degrees every single day. Baseball, and I'm repping my son's baseball team, the Ahwatukee Devils. That's my hat today. Club baseball is in full gear. It starts typically in like September and goes through like April or May. And this is just a great time of year. A lot to look forward to in Arizona. You got the Arizona Fall League going. You got Matt Mervis and Owen Casey raking, looking good. Still no sign of Brennan Davis, but apparently what do the Cubs say?
General soreness.
General soreness, yeah. Have they even said that? Like, I don't think they've said that. I think that's been like, maybe is that Sahadev Sharma?
Yeah, I think that was like
the only person who knows anything.
Got like somebody told him that, and so it's like, which is like the step back from like in hockey, you know, somebody's got a lower body injury or an upper body injury. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like hockey, they don't designate anything. Like football is very specific. Baseball is specific at the major league level during the regular season. But when you're talking about the minors and specifically the AFL and anything, if it's like the Arizona Complex League or whatever, there's a lot of times, like, hell, there's times when the only reason we know, like, Rich got a picture of, I think, Drew Gray, like this past spring, wearing his elbow thing, like, oh, he just had his ACL or his UCL replaced. Like, we don't know anything. And then you'll see a photographer get a picture of a dude like, hey, did you have your elbow redone? Yep. Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
kind of significant. You know, hey, top draft pick, no big deal. Oh, just had my elbow reconstructed. Team doesn't need to let you know about that. They share what they are forced to share, and usually nothing more.
Well, and it's funny, you know, because with technology, medical technology, and the way it's developed these days is with these types of things, kind of sports injuries, a lot of it is just kind of like, you know, normal thing, something that happens. They have a little surgery, everything gets worked out, and they're back as good as new, if not better. And so I don't know if that's the attitude that the Cubs take with this stuff, or if it's just kind of general complacency, or, you know, what the deal is with that. But it's kind of weird.
And I think part of it, though, and this is like Davis in particular, where you even saw rating services and scouts and things talk about, oh, his back surgery. It's like, listen, it wasn't a structural thing. It was like he had a weird vascular bundle that was pinching on a nerve and causing some tingling and pain down his leg. Yeah. It wasn't, you know, they didn't go in there and you know, fuse a disc or something or have to do actual structural work. So yes, was the surgery, and it was like a little exploratory thing. So we're like, hey, we got to check this out. Did they have to go in there and tweak something that was near his back? Yes. And therefore it's called back surgery, but it's not like the kind of thing, you know, that should have any kind of a lasting effect. That said, you know, I wonder if, you know, the blowback from that, and knowing that he was coming off of that, and knowing that sort of can, not that they should care what anybody ranks him or anything, but, you know, I think when you're entering into the season, I'm not saying they're trying to trade him or anything like that, but anything that would go out there that other teams could use for leverage, and saying whether the Cubs wanted to hold on to him or trade him, if Davis is having issues, that does hurt their overall farm system. It hurts their depth. It could hurt their ability to make a trade and have leverage in a trade, even if it's for somebody else, right? Alexander Canario or Kevin Alcantara. Again, I'm not saying they're trying to trade any of those players, but I do think the Cubs are going to be buyers on the trade market this winter, and I think they want to maintain as much leverage as possible in every possible angle of that. And so, you know, being a little bit evasive maybe about Davis's actual health is I don't know if it helps them. It's one less thing that could potentially hurt them, which is that's what kind of sucks about this part of the year. I know we talk about it all the time. We joke about the speculation and the rumors are great for us as a website and getting traffic, but it is difficult a lot of times as a fan, because there's just so much muddying of the water when it comes to these various reports. And damn well scouts, not so much scouts, but agents are just chumming the water, man, with so much bullshit information that is never going to come to pass. But they want to drive value. They want to get people talking about their players. They want to get teams battling against one another, even if it's just in the media. And so this is just one more aspect of that. It's very difficult to know, what's real and what's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's forced chaos to a certain extent, right? I mean, the more chaos there is, the better it seems to work out for the players. So I get it; it makes sense. But and a lot of fans tend to kind of ride the emotional waves, so to speak, around their teams, and so it's hard to kind of take that step back if you're a fan. I think that's what we attempt to do, is to give them a path to, kind of setting expectations and understanding kind of, the rumors that are floating out there are just that until they actually become, free agent signing or an actual trade that happens. But in the same sense, like you said, you've got to talk about it. But the thing with Davis, I mean, Davis wouldn't even be playing in the AFL if he wouldn't have had that back surgery. And so the only reason he was in the AFL was because he came back. And to that extent, I mean, and I don't want to say that this is true, but it could be true, is do you think the Cubs are regretting putting him in the AFL at all? I mean, he didn't need to go to the AFL. He really didn't even need to come back this season, arguably. I mean, he came back and he looked good for the short amount of time he was back. He looked really good for the short amount of time he played in the AFL. So it's like his skill set didn't diminish over the, couple months it took him to have the surgery and then bounce back from it. But it's like one of those things, like with the Cubs, I don't want to say they rushed him back, but could they have been slower, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, and we could ask the same thing of Miguel Amaya, right? Who came back, got bumped up to Double-A after a little bit of time in the Arizona Complex League, was slated to play in the Arizona Fall League. That's why Owen Casey's in there. Owen Casey was not going to play in the AFL, but Miguel Amaya got hurt, and they moved Casey in there. It was Amaya broke his ring finger or whatever, dislocated it or something. And so it's actually kind of interesting, and I won't get into it now, but I'll address this similarly when we maybe talk about some of the Anthony Rizzo stuff here in a little bit. But it's one of those things that's tough because the decision at the time is viewed one way, and then obviously subsequent things that come up, subsequent events can make that decision look better or worse in hindsight. So at the time you say, hey, Davis missed most of the season. We really want to keep him on this path to being able to come up and debut in the majors next season, possibly break camp with the team, but at least make his way up. And he's really got his not only did he miss the season, but he was hampered in the early going by that nerve issue, right? He had some leg pain and some tingling and weird stuff, and his timing was off. So they're saying, hey, we got to figure out a way to do this. We want to get him into competition, which, again, the 2020 season hurt him. He was at the alternate site, so he did get in some kind of live, quote-unquote, at-bats, but it's very different when you talk about actual competition. And so that all made sense. But now if you look at it and go, well, crap, he's hurt again, or maybe not hurt, maybe not injured, but he's sore, right? He's got some sort of issue.
For 2 weeks, though. I mean, he's been out for over 2 weeks.
Pretty significant.
That's significant.
Yeah, that's beyond just like precautionary, right? Or so I think. Now, at the same time, you could look at it, say, as you said, was it really necessary? And I think they're also looking at this going like, it's not as if this is, a team that's competing for the playoffs and we need this. It's like, hey, if there's anything, like, dude, it's an exhibition season. We're not going to push it. Or the same thing with Amaya, right? Those subsequent injuries that have come up when it feels like maybe did we rush him or not?
Yeah.
Well, you look back on it, and at the time it felt like, yes, it's absolutely the right decision. Everything's a green light. We feel great about it. And then you look back later, it's like, in retrospect, that decision looks different, but the decision itself wasn't bad. It's the circumstances that played out following the decision that maybe, because, again, what if you don't have him play and he was perfectly healthy, but that sets him back moving forward? So lot of different things there. I don't know that they regret it, to actually answer your question. I don't think they regret it. Because I know they needed to get this look at him. And if nothing else, he is, I'm sure, provided it's not something really significant, he's still able to get in his work and be at the facility and be under the guidance of the staff that they've got in place there. So I just hope that everything is, I really hope this is absolutely a precautionary thing, right? That,
Yeah, I mean,
it's a bit of a
here's the thing
stretch, but
is,
still.
I would think that I won't be surprised if we do not see Brennan Davis for the rest of the AFL, because given that he's, whatever's happened, whatever the general soreness is that's kept him out for 2 weeks, to me, if I'm the Cubs, I'm like, whoa, let's back it up here. I mean, we could just let him work out in the offseason, let him get back healthy, let him come into spring training just like any other player would, let him compete for an opening day job just like any other player would. Let's not worry. I mean, we saw he's got the ability still. I mean, his skills have not diminished in any way, shape, or form. There's absolutely no reason to risk whatever is going on right now turning into something bigger, assuming it's not something that's big that we don't know about. And so I just wish that the Cubs were more transparent with what was happening here and just gave us some information to go off of. I understand what you're saying, where, they may not want to show their hand, because that kind of, there's a lot of different moving pieces here in terms of what happens in the offseason, where they have needs. And I mean, obviously they're flush in the outfield prospect category, and sure, maybe they want to trade some of those outfield prospects, and, the value to them with a whole bunch of prospects, isn't as great as maybe the value to another team that really needs some prospects. And so if you have that leverage, you want to keep it. So I get all that stuff, but in the same sense, I don't know, it just feels a little wonky that we're still sitting here kind of wondering where he is, but it is what it is. You mentioned Anthony Rizzo. Go ahead.
Yeah. Wait, and this may not have any sort of impact, but I gotta say it before I lose track of it. Which AFL team do the Guardians assign their players to?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
I'd have to look.
I just, because
it's not the Solar.
It's not the Solar Sox. Okay, so that wouldn't matter as much. And I was just like, my brain was going to trades, Guardians, Shane Bieber. Is there some weird again? I'm and here's where we get. We will. I can talk about really pissing people off here in a little bit as we get to that next topic. But it is funny when we talk about whether it's rumors, whether it's reports, whether it's speculation, whether it's me not liking the way the new sports book looks. One of the things that really bothers me a lot of times, and actually it's been weird because normally our website comments are pretty measured. There's kind of a small community of people that you'll see the same, really 3 or 4, maybe up to 5 people kind of regularly commenting. They kind of all know each other's personalities, and you get it, and things are generally respectful. But we've had a lot of weird stuff lately, and it's really funny to me how, it shouldn't be a surprise looking at the political landscape and things like that, how people just decide to go dig in real deep. Like, there's no, like, okay, I can see how you would think this way, but let me offer my point of view. More, it's like, complaining about this is so dumb. Only Sox fans would complain about this. It looks fun. And I'm like, anybody who complains about it is childish or a Sox fan, somebody said to me. And I'm like, I don't know. I
appreciate them,
but
equating Sox fans with
It's like, okay, Sox fan probably wouldn't care. But then on the other side, it's just like, you're an idiot if you think different from this. Either way, right? There's very little in that middle ground. So I guess when it comes down to these rumors, it's that same way. You'll get all these people like, this is stupid. Don't write about it till it happens. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
I don't know if you
I did see that one the other day.
But it's like, if we waited to write about anything until something definitive happened, I don't know if you followed free agency the last few years.
We would have nothing to write
about. Last year when there was a lockout, we would just have to shut the site down for months at a time.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing going on. Between the Marcus Stroman signing and then the Seiya Suzuki signing, we would just have to fire the thing up today and be like, no news today, post. publish. So anyway, that's part of it. But you're always going to have those folks. And that's what's always so wild to me is like, again, yeah, and the one person was complaining about that. Like, these are just reports. Whatever happened to real journalism, like what John used to have at Cubs Den. And I'm like, all right, first of all, let's not defame the memory of John Aguello. Like, I'm like, that's a friend of mine. That's someone who, who I really respected and like to pick his brain about stuff. And I thought he was a great part of the community, but I thought it was so odd to have invoked his memory as this sign of like great quote unquote journalism when he was in the exact same boat with the rest of us when it came to doing this as a passion project, doing this as a way to follow certain things. Obviously his niche was being in the backfields and following the prospects and really kind of picking that stuff out. But I bristle when people are like, this isn't real journalism, because I'm like, no shit, it's not real journalism. So using that in a pejorative sense is really dumb. And it's just such an ignorant statement. Like, yeah, I'm not credentialed. I'm not doing this. I don't have
we are
BBWAA.
in fact not credentialed.
Right.
We've actually asked to be credentialed.
We've tried to be credentialed. I got credentialed at a single A game one time when the Cubs.
It's not part of MLB though.
Yeah, before they went to Myrtle Beach when they were the Daytona Cubs. Although that wasn't even at their home ballpark. They were playing in Jupiter, and that was like against the Marlins affiliate. It was either the Marlins or the Cardinals affiliate because they both share that facility there in Jupiter, Florida. But I got credentialed there. I was the only media member there, period, which is kind of funny. But again, and I think that's where it comes down to is like, we're not the Athletic. We're not the Chicago Sun-Times. We're not the Chicago Tribune. Like, we're not trying to be either. And I think that's the issue is when somebody looks at that and says, you're not X. And it's like, well, right. That's actually the point. And so you criticizing me for that is a really dumb thing or a really ignorant thing, because that isn't what we do, right? We're not coming at it from that angle. And yes, while we do get some scoops and some inside stuff and that sort of thing, a lot of times I don't say we're forced to rely on reports, but a lot of what we do is we're going to take those reports that are out there, we're going to run them through some of our own personal filters, and we're going to present things, sometimes conflicting views or whatever, or different stuff, and then put out our own spin on what this means. And the funny thing was, this person was complaining about saying I quote unquote stole the work of real journalists when I wrote that Bruce Levine had said that the Cubs would be interested in Jose Abreu. So I wrote that Bruce Levine said that, so I cited Levine and quoted him and linked back to stuff, and then talked about how Abreu would be a good fit. And I just think that's really weird, because it's like, no, that's like, if you are talking real journalism, that's how real journalism works. If somebody else broke that story, you talk about that story, you cite that work, you credit them for breaking it, you continue to go on and provide your own report. It's the weirdest stuff that people get worked up about. I get worked up about it just because, like, I get more worked up about the ignorance of somebody else coming at us with that. It was really
after
funny.
All these years, I am surprised that you still are amazed by the level of ineptitude from some of the people that come on the site.
I'll say this. So this person questioned, and what's weird though is they came at me on our site. Usually it's like Facebook, I'm not amazed by anymore. Like it's incredible, some of the takes that are spewed there. Even Twitter, like yesterday was weird. We'll talk about the Rizzo thing. I've teased it enough. We'll finally get there. Twitter had a bunch of blowback about something I said. But this was on our site, which was really weird. And this person was like, "Oh, you young kids and your humor." And I'm like, "How old do you think I am?" So probably like 16 to 20. I'm like, okay, well, more than twice that. But anyway, so I eventually, and they said some other kind of untoward things, and I ended up banning this person because of some, when it gets to a certain level, I don't
Is that
mind
the guy that's stalking you?
Yes. And the person, they tried to add me on LinkedIn. I got an email later, like the next day. They tried to add me on LinkedIn. Like, how dumb do you think I am? Like, and they actually created a new user profile to come back and troll, which I also blocked.
I'd see, for me,
but then
I
they tried to add me. That's weird,
and they go away. They don't even exist in my mind. And so,
well, but if it's on the site, if it's on our site, right? Because I try to curate those. I just
Every
want
once in
to,
a while,
because
I'll go in and say something.
yeah,
But
because then the other thing that happens though is then something will get in there and it'll devolve into a bunch of other weird infighting. You know what I mean? And so I'm
yeah.
like, it's better to just boop, delete and block and move on from there. Like the person who keeps commenting the same thing over and over again. They do it on various websites because they don't know that we can go
But
look at
here's
what their
the thing
comment
is
history
that
is.
we
Funny.
don't know who these people are. I mean, they may be unbalanced. They may be sitting in a jail cell somewhere. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
I
this
mean,
person's supposedly like an Air Force air traffic controller, Navy air traffic controller somewhere in Alabama or Mississippi, I guess. So
I mean,
who knows?
who knows what to expect there?
But I just thought like LinkedIn, like you looked me up on LinkedIn, and
Yeah,
now we're gonna
that
connect
is
there
going
after
the
this.
extra mile. That is
Yeah,
putting the
I got to give
extra.
him credit, but that's why I went to that one because I was like, that's a new one there. That's a new one. I've had people email
Next
me.
thing you know,
I've
ding
gotten
dong.
voicemails.
Hi.
And I forgot. I thought I still had it. I tried to find this old voicemail that I had. If somebody like laid out this whole like yelling at me about some stuff. That was
Somebody
wild. Like
called
that was a little
you?
bit scary. Yeah, they actually called. I don't know how they got my number. But this person actually called me and left me a voicemail.
Can you imagine, like, so this is, I mean, we just talk about the Cubs here, and there's really no significant things happening here. Can you imagine, like, what some of these national reporters deal
Oh
with?
my God.
I
No,
mean,
especially if they're women or people of color. You know what I mean? Like
oh,
it is well, yeah. But for someone to have called me, and that was what was so funny, and that
that's
might
so
have been
weird. Like,
back
I
when
don't
I
even
was
call
running the
you.
other. Right. Well, and I can't remember if this is from when I was doing the Into the Basket podcast on 670 The Score. I don't know that it was necessarily related to the site because it was something, but I still don't know how they would have gotten my, like, that was a little bit scary.
So people, the thing to take away from this is that don't be one of those people. Just read the
Yeah,
stuff. If you disagree with it, kind of present your counterpoint in the comments. Don't
yeah.
get all wacky. Don't start being
Don't
weird.
stalk people online.
Stalking people.
You
It's
know,
just it's
yeah. But if
uncomfortable
you
and
have a problem, I guess that's my thing. If you have a problem, right? If you don't like something, and that's how I got started in this whole thing. I didn't like some of the content that was out there, and I said, well, I could complain about it, or I could start writing on my own, and that's what I told this person. I was like, okay, well, if you say our content sucks, first of all, why are you here reading it? Like every time you show up on this page to comment, that's another click that we get. So you're actually helping us out to an extent. But like, if you don't like it, then here, present some counter. I'll throw you out an offer. Here you go. Write 1,000 words of your own on an original topic of your own choosing.
You're just asking for more work. You know that.
Oh no, it'll never happen because it never has. No one has
Exactly.
ever done it. I said, or you could just be a coward, right? And just hide behind these dumb comments. But what I'm saying is, if you said, well, I'm willing to do this, which they're not, right? It's like just present the counter, do the work, right? Or don't complain about it. But at the very least, if you're going to be in there and complain about it, be constructive. Or
Evan,
or
here's
offer
what
a
I want from
counterpoint.
you. I've heard you what you're saying, but I want a solution. I want a way to resolve this so that we never have to address it again. Is it just
Instead
to
of
shut off the comments?
is there an idiot test that we can put out there? Like just like
Is there
automatically you have
like
to
an
apply.
IQ test you've got to take before you can
You have
answer
to
or
apply
comment?
to be able to comment, and you have to give us some options for us. So like, what other sites do you go to? Like when it's on, because when it's
Yeah.
on Discuss, like I'll do that a lot. Like I'll see, or if it's on Twitter, you can go and look at you can
We'd
bring up
like
their
to,
profile and kind of look
like
at their
when we bring on a
previous.
new writer, like we
Yeah,
want to see some of
we
your
go
comments.
and check their work. So I'll go back and look. I'll be like, okay, is this person like, what other sites do they comment on? What do they say on these other sites?
And there should be
That sort of things.
too. I mean, that's the thing.
Kyle, I think you mean fisticuffs. FISTICUFFS. One word.
I think we've just created a new product. All right. So a commenting system where you actually, the commenters get rated on their comments. And if a commenter, like you can set like people who are rated at like, let's say it's 1 to 5.
You get the Mendoza line. you fall below that. You're
if
done.
you're below 3, you cannot comment on the site. And so you either have, why wouldn't you do that? Well,
that'd be great. Actually,
I'm calling somebody.
Yeah, upvotes and downvotes, and like if you hit a certain, it's like NPS, right? National Promoter Score. A lot of corporations do that, and you get rated up or down. You're trying to get a good NPS, so it's like, hey, you got to have a good, net commenter score, and as long as you maintain that, then you can continue to comment. But when you start spewing all kinds of dumb tripe out on the site, then we have problems, and you go away, and we don't have to monitor that. Then we just know that we're not going to have a-holes on there.
I've got that net commenter score under. I've got it all lined out. Okay, we're going to do that. Next topic is Mr. Anthony Rizzo opting out of his final year of his contract. Let the rumors begin. Anthony Rizzo, soon to be a Chicago Cub, soon to be the first baseman for the Chicago Cubs for the next 3 years, no matter what amount of money he wants. Doesn't matter. The Cubs are going to sign him. All our dreams are going to come true. Tell me where I'm wrong there.
I don't think he's coming back. Okay. I think this is like similar to what I don't know if it will happen with Smiley, but we've heard the same thing with Drew Smiley. Like he and the Cubs will work out something. I think Rizzo opted out. He had a 2-year, $32 million deal. He opted out of a year and 6, or he's expected to, right? You can't officially do it till the season's over. He's expected to opt out of the last year and $16 million. But my assumption is that he'll work something out to stay there in New York. And it was interesting. There's a couple of things on that. The one is just I think that makes more sense, right? He's coming off of a pretty strong season there. I think he clearly enjoys it there. Part of the reason he went there is because he does have family in New York. The fact that the Yankees won 92 games, made the postseason last year after the trade, they won 99 games, were World Series favorites through most of the season. Obviously, they're going to try to get better.
Fix that situation, though.
Yeah,
and their offense really wasn't great either.
Yeah, he's got the short porch there that he can hit into. Not only in New York, Boston's got a short right field porch. Exactly. Tampa's got a short right field line. It's Aaron Judge. Like these guys, if you're a slugger, and with Judge being able to go oppo, and with Rizzo being more of a pull hitter, it's a really nice place to play. So my assumption is that he'll opt out of that year to be able to lock in more years, more overall money with them.
Probably like a 3-year deal max, I would guess.
Yeah, like 3 for $45 million, or
maybe an option at the end there.
36 to $45 million somewhere. I think 12 to 15 makes sense. Yeah, maybe 2 years with a 3rd-year option, or 3 years with an opt out again. Something like that I think works for both sides. Because and he had said, he had commented the other day that he thinks Aaron Judge should stay there. He's like, we got a lot of these guys jumping ship, which sounds funny if he's expected to opt out, to say other people are jumping ship, which again leads me to believe it could just be that he's full of shit and he's fully intending on jumping ship. But I think it's more a matter of reworking his own deal. Now, I will say, and here's what caused the hubbub, right? Is that I tweeted something yesterday. I said the Cubs lowballed Anthony Rizzo. And then I made a separate statement that said, Anthony Rizzo probably would have been better off taking the Cubs offer. These things can both be true. And a bunch of people got really defensive about it. And like, what are you talking about? The Cubs made a fair offer, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no. Let's dial this back, right? You're trying to look at this, but we'll look at the other offers that were on the table. There were no other offers on the table. He wasn't a free agent when they made him an extension offer. That's not how this works. You don't compare what he got from the Yankees. So will the Yankees then lowballed him because nobody? No, that's not how it works. It's also a year later after he'd had kind of a rough season. So again, a lowball is when we knew he expected about nine-figure deal, about $100 million deal. Probably not fully what Paul Goldschmidt got, but those were the reports that was pretty widely believed. So if the Cubs come in with 4 years and $60 million initially, which was the case, and then came back with 5 for 70. That's nowhere near what he was looking for, either in AAV or total value. They knew he wasn't going to take those offers. Now, they might have considered that there was a jumping off point. Maybe they felt like they could have stretched or he could have come back down. But I don't believe the Cubs, I look at it this way. If he had accepted that, they put it at a level to where they were like, we don't think he'll take it, but if he does, we'd be comfortable with this. But I think they knew he wasn't going to take those offers. Hence, they lowballed him. Now, can that also? And what's funny is everybody missed the second point.
So what did he get from the Yankees when
2 for 32
re-signed with them? So yeah, I mean, it's like I don't even know if you can say the Cubs lowballed him. And when Hoyer came out and said, "Listen, I think the deals that we had offered to these players are going to stand up in free agency," I think he's been right on. I mean, with
Well,
the exception of maybe Chris Bryant.
Well,
I mean,
Bryant
look at
got
what
more.
Javier Baez has been doing.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Schwarber's
But
been doing good, but
this
he
is what I'm
wasn't really
saying.
part of the equation.
This is what I'm saying. It's just like I said earlier, time tells that. The Cubs made that offer in March of 21. When Hoyer said that stuff, that was later in the season after, none of them had a very good year in 21. A lot of the reason, Rizzo's back acted up again. His numbers weren't great. And so, yes, the offers they made in the past. Now, the one to Bryant, that's got to go way back in time to like 17. There wasn't anything new from there. Javi, they actually got really close on. The pandemic shut that down. But what I'm looking at it the same way, though. What I'm saying is the low ball is in terms of when they made that offer. At the time they made that offer, there was no way Rizzo was going to accept it because he was looking for 9 figures, right? Now, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months down the road, you can look back on it and be like, damn, he should have taken that. That deal did end up holding up over time, but it's in a similar way. I put this analogy out there in the piece that I wrote. If I have, homes in my area are going for, I'm being speculative. I'm not saying this is actually the case, but let's say homes in my area are selling for $500,000. Okay. And I put my home on the market for $500,000 and somebody comes and offers me $375. I'm going to laugh in their face. I'm not taking $375. I'm not taking a 25% decrease on my offer when I know homes in here are going. So I turn that offer down. And the next night, a freak earthquake hits my area. The foundation of my house cracks. I have a water leak that ruins my basement. I've got to get that stuff all fixed. Because of this, I now have to turn around. I got to move. Now I sell my house for $225 because I got to get the hell out of here. I got lowballed. That does not change. Now that lowball offer looks way better after all this shit happened to me. But at the time, it was a shitty offer that I never would have taken. Now, given the benefit of hindsight, if I could see the future and be like, oh, crap, man, there's an earthquake coming. I better sell this thing now. So that's what I'm saying is that when I say they lowballed him, I'm not saying they made a bad offer or that their offer didn't stand up. I'm saying
it's
it was
all
never
relative
meant to
the
happen.
situation, though, right?
At the
and
time.
So the thing is that I think you could say they lowballed him if he was a free agent. And so, but you have to take that into consideration, right? So he wasn't a free agent at the time they made his offer. So yes, if he was a free agent, given his performance, then yes, perhaps that would have been a lowball. But when you're just negotiating against yourself, it is what it is. When he hit the free agent market, I mean, to me, that's where you say you have a market for a home, you have a market for a player, you have a market. And if you just come to somebody on a private level and you just say, hey, knock on someone's door and say, hey, listen, this is my offer to you, that's not really an open market offer. So you don't really know until somebody hits the market. So I agree with what you're saying. I think at a free agent level, if he would have been a free agent when they made him that offer, that would have been a low offer.
No, that would have been a great offer if he had been a free agent, because by the time he hit free agency, he could only get $32 million for 2.
No, I'm saying at the time they made the offer, if he was a free agent.
But that would have been but now we're changing it. What I'm saying is, if I say, hey, I'm interested in an extension, my ask, my starting point is $100 million, and you come and say, we'll do 60. That is low. That is a low ball. What I'm saying is, if I provide you with an offer, if I know if you and I are interested in doing business together, but I provide you an offer that I know you are not going to accept, that I know is too low for you to accept, I have lowballed you.
Yeah, but I would argue the opposite side of that, which is from the perspective of the person making the offer. They're saying, "Hey, listen, this is what to us, this is your value."
And but I'm not. But here's the thing: I'm not saying the Cubs did anything wrong. That was a bad offer, right? I want to exclude these. I don't want to, like I said before, calling me not a journalist should not be a pejorative thing. Calling it a lowball offer is not a pejorative. I'm not saying the Cubs were dumb. I'm not saying the Cubs were wrong. I'm not saying they shouldn't have lowballed him. I'm saying they did. And as a result, that offended him. He felt disrespected, right? I'm putting this in Anthony. If I'm saying this from Anthony Rizzo's perspective, he felt lowballed. He cut off negotiations, said, we're not going to talk during the regular season. I do not have an offer on the table I am willing to accept. I'm not going to talk during the regular season. That effectively ended his tenure in Chicago, because they gave him an offer they knew he wasn't going to accept. He was not willing to come down from where he was. And again, so
but did his offer include goodwill? That's what I'm saying. And on his part,
I have no idea.
I'm just saying, don't you think that to a certain extent there was some goodwill that he thought he had built up with the Cubs and
Oh,
with the
yes,
Cubs
yes.
fan,
Yeah, because he
that he
took a
thought
really
he
low offer.
deserved to
His
be
first
paid for.
extension was low.
So he
Yeah,
wanted to be paid for something that had happened in the past to a certain
right.
extent.
But the
Right,
Cubs
and
weren't
so
going to
that
pay
I
him
think
for
that's where
that.
the difference in
Yeah, no,
valuation lied. Like Rizzo
right,
thought my value is way up here because look at what I've done for you, and that's not how it works.
right.
Is the
Well, and
value really is derived from
right, it's
what
what goes forward. Now,
future?
I think he and his representatives were probably also banking on the fact that, like, hey, he's got, the Lurie Children's Hospital, the tie-ins there and the philanthropy and all
Yeah,
that stuff locally and being like the face of the franchise and whatnot. But again, so I want to. That's where I wanted to clarify things, because when a lot of people heard me say lowball and they thought I was saying some negative thing or saying the Cubs were dumb or bad or should have given him $100 million. Like, it was very factual. Like, a lot of, you can imply whatever you want from it, but I'm saying factually speaking, and somebody who was like trying to argue against me actually like kind of proved my point for me. But to me, a lowball offer is one that I make that I know will not be accepted, that I know will be flat turned down just on paper, right? That's by definition what that is, and that's what the Cubs did, even if, right, they were projecting forward and saying, this is as high as we're going to go because this is where we feel your market is.
yeah,
He did not feel the same. But what it comes down to, though, is realistically, you look at it a couple different ways and look at it and go, well, if I'm Rizzo, if he can get, let's say he gets 3 years and $45 million from the Yankees, that's $61 million for 4 years that he's gotten from the Yankees. That beats the Cubs' initial offer, comes in a little bit lower than where they came back, but he's also now been in the playoffs the last 2 years, and the Yankees figure to be hungry to do so again. I think the Cubs do too, but there's also that
and
matter of,
he's
like,
in a bigger
the Cubs.
market too.
Yeah,
He's
the
probably
Cubs
getting
sucked.
more.
Cubs sucked in his last year there. They sucked this past season, and so you look at it like, well, I mean, if I'm Anthony Rizzo, is it worth? 60 million, 70 million? Pretty sure I'm going to be able to retire comfortably with either of those figures.
Yeah,
And
probably.
if I can do so while playing in New York, and then I still look at it and go, I have heard that he would be amenable to, kind of playing out the end of his career and finishing up maybe in Miami. Now, I don't know if the Marlins would ever be competitive enough to make that work, but if there's no state income tax down there in Florida and you can get down there and maybe finish out a couple seasons down there as kind of a trophy, figurehead kind of a guy and DH and first base or whatever, I can see that happening at the end. So where it comes down to, and where I wanted to kind of make this around, because a lot of people were hearing him opt out, talking about him coming back. But I do think also, to bring this around to something more salient, I don't know that. And here's the other thing I want to note is that there were talks about potential there were some extension talks that occurred in late 2019. So we're talking, 2 years before, or a year and a half before this latest round of the low ball. And at that time, even the Cubs and Rizzo were way far apart on value. And he had even spoken publicly and made some comments about how he didn't feel like, I don't know if not that he felt disrespected necessarily, but something along those lines, where he didn't feel like they were taking it as seriously as he would have liked. And Jed Hoyer kind of bristled at that, I think, or Theo bristled at it. And I just kind of wonder if maybe there's not a little bit of, I don't want to say bad blood, but, maybe there's some egos and there's some pride and some things like that I think between Hoyer and Rizzo, because Hoyer has acted in a very calculated, unemotional manner. Whereas, we've spoken about Theo Epstein maybe being too emotional and too attached to some of these guys. And that's why he left a year early. Even if Rizzo does opt out and choose to hit free agency, I don't know that he would want to go back, especially after he's had a taste of these things in New York again, right? I mean, obviously he won, he was competitive in Chicago, but does he trust the Cubs to be competitive again? If he's kind of nearing the end of his career and he knows that, is that where that's going to come down? In addition to, again, actually, the last thing I'll say on this too is you remember after Hoyer talked about how they had made offers to everybody, this was immediately following the trades, and Rizzo was asked about it. He kind of made some comments about, well, I mean, look at what happened, right? We're all gone. So if there had really been some real attempts to re-sign any of us, but we're all gone,
Listen,
what does that tell you?
My counter is, look what happened in 2018, 2019, and 2020.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, at the end of the day, those guys together as a team were not producing. They were extraordinarily disappointing coming off what felt like an early World Series, a trip to the World Series in 2016. I mean, that's the reality of the situation.
Oh,
And
for
if you're
sure.
Jed Hoyer, you've got to sort through that. And so
Right.
I think that where the Cubs are currently is good. I agree. I don't think there's any chance Anthony Rizzo comes back. And listen, if he and all the other players, Kyle Schwarber and Javi Baez and the guys who were part of that 2016 team have bad feelings, then they just don't understand the business. And I get it because they're players, but at the end of the day, it is a business, and the Ricketts they're not going to just dump money into a team that's not able to get to and win the
Well,
World
I would
Series
also say
again.
the problem still, I always go back to, the problem wasn't those core players. It was they never did a good enough job of properly surrounding them with talent. If you look at some of these teams that are in there that are winning, it's not just that they have these 3 stud players. They've done such a good job of building properly around them. And I think they'll do a better job of that now. And part of that was the situation of like, okay, well, if we extend all these guys and we are operating under the current budget that we have, it's a chicken egg, but it's multiple. It's like
Yeah.
a
I mean,
bunch of chickens
to
and a
be
bunch of
honest
eggs.
with
But
you, I think the Hayward deal really was a huge issue in all of this. They paid him way too much money for the production they didn't get, and it really hampered them. I mean, they weren't they over the cap there for a
yeah,
while?
a couple years. Yep.
And so they had to get down underneath the cap because it gets way too punitive the longer you stay above the cap. That was an issue, and the issue
Well, it
that
was
was
that
mainly due to this
and
huge
not developing
contract.
pitchers. It was not developing because they went out and they signed Yu Darvish, and then they overpaid for Tyler Chatwood, and they got Brandon Morrow, and so they had to keep buying. And they had John Hayward, Jesus, John Lester, in addition to Jason Hayward.
Yeah.
Those were all these big. So they had all these things compounding. And
And then
if
at
we
the same
go,
time, you were having these guys with a lot of swing and miss,
yeah,
and it was every single one of them. And there wasn't a lot of
right, they
contact. There
didn't
was a lot
balance
of
it,
power in some games, and then there was just nothing for like a week,
right,
And
which is,
so I mean, like
and then I
that
go
was the
back
guys
on
that
it,
were on the team.
yeah, and I look at where, yeah, Morrow was the one who hurt his back right at the end of the first half of the season, putting on his pants. Was that 18? And so you look at it, but you go, if I look at one area where I said the one that got away, and I look at the World Series right now, and I look at the gentleman who just sent the Phillies to the World Series, and it was NLCS MVP and hit 400 some, is Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper wanted to sign with the Cubs. The Cubs, or the front office, wanted to sign Bryce Harper, but because of the things that were in there with the budget and where things were being projected and everything else, they could not get the green light to go out and get him. And I know, some people will say that they were a little gun shy because of Hayward, which, I mean, yes, I think that's painting with too broad a brush. Hayward
But
impacted
you
that
still
because of the
have
money and because of everything
the
else.
pitching as an issue, though,
Right. The pitching was the issue, is the fact that they had
and you
spent
signed
so
Bryce
much.
Harper, and that doesn't fix that.
Right, because Darvish was signed for whatever he, and I mean, between Darvish and Lester, and then you add in Chatwood, I mean, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. But
And Lester was
again, if you,
declining big
yeah,
time
but
his last couple of years.
if you get a Harper, then Harper's still under contract right now. Even if you ended up moving those other guys, you can kind of re-add back in there. But that's a dude. I think things did not work out as well. And again, that's a rough one. I mean, he all but said, I want to go and play for the Cubs. Like that was, and all the reports had it. And Theo Epstein, he telegraphed really heavily that that's what they wanted to do. Everything comes out. They just didn't have the budget to do it at the time and did not have the flexibility to make that happen. And that's what's kind of tough. And I know, but that's where they need to get back to making those big swings, because if you look at some of these teams and what they've been able to do, I mean, the Phillies added Harper, they added Zach Wheeler, they signed JT Realmuto. They went and they got Castellanos. They got Schwarber. They've added a lot of big-time talented people, big contracts. They've talked about spending money. John Middleton or whatever, right? The Phillies owner has been like, Bryce Harper is worth more than what do they give him? $330 million for how many years, right? And he was 26 at the time. 26 he hit free agency because he was freaking 19 years old. Just an insane phenom of a. So again, I look at some things like that and say that there are areas. Intelligent spending does not just mean being cheap and seeking value at a low cost. It means, so I tweeted this earlier though. I said, here's the thing about intelligent spending. You look smart when you win, and it's easier to win when you spend money. So it really, intelligent spending, quote unquote, we could change that definition however the hell we want. But at the end of the day, if you make it back and you win a World Series, it looks smart as hell, right? But it doesn't look very intelligent if you go cheap and you just get your ass handed to you.
Well, and that's
over
a
the
big
course
thing,
of the season
is winning the World Series, right? I mean, I think the Phillies are going to get swept. We could talk about that later, but I don't think they're going to. Even if they don't, I would be very surprised if they're able to beat the Houston Astros, who I think are a far superior team. And so, just getting to the World Series. I mean, the Colorado Rockies made it to the World Series too. Remember, they swept their way through everything, and then they got their butts kicked by the Boston Red Sox. I mean, I think that's.
But they're making money. But the Phillies. But they did. But I think they still have that same core group of players coming back, right? They've got the capability. The thing that they've done is they put themselves in a position.
I mean,
they weren't necessarily dominant.
Screw something up.
Probably. Well, not as bad as the Mets. But when you have, they're winning on the strength of their star players with Kyle Schwarber and again Bryce Harper and guys like that coming through in the clutch, and having these dudes who can play in that big moment, who can come up with that. And that's where I say, like, you don't have to win 110
87 games, right?
Yeah. Well, the Braves won 88 games last year, and they rode that hot streak. All you've got to do is
don't win 90.
Yeah. Just get in. And obviously you have to have the talent to be able to, right? The pitching's got to show up. You've got to come up with the big, obviously those things all speak for themselves, but what it comes down to is just, as long as you get there, that's the thing. But like the Phillies sold a record amount of World Series merchandise in the first 24 hours that it was in there. But in addition to that merchandise,
that's a bandwagon effect.
You've got the extra gate from each of those home games. You've got the concessions. You've got the parking. You've got all the money that's being spent around the team. Guess what you can do? Charge more for season tickets. Sell more season tickets. The Cubs could really use that. And that doesn't just come from winning the World Series. If you're competitive and you make the postseason, you can really push that on that. You can charge more for local advertising on your network, things like that. So there are some serious residual financial effects that come from that. And that's where I say, like, spending intelligently, again, it's not a blanket statement. That could mean a bunch of things. It could also mean spending from your prospect capital, as Jed Hoyer calls it, to pick up.
I think that's more likely to be what we see. And I think based off of, and that's recency bias, right? Because of what had happened coming out of the 15, 16 seasons where the Cubs had all these prospects. They didn't, and they should have traded Schwarber, honestly, after 2016.
Well, it would have been a hell of a lot better than non-tendering him.
Yeah, he was at the height of his value. And then he just did not really perform the next couple years after that. And so, yeah, was last season. So the Cubs had a number of disappointing off seasons, which you had mentioned, right? They really didn't sign anybody to surround the stars with the kind of supplemental talent that they needed, and supplemental being a word that was used by Jed Hoyer earlier this off season. And do you think the Cubs had a bad offseason? It feels like to me the Cubs had a pretty good offseason last year. In fact, it was their best offseason since probably when they signed Lester, I guess, and Madden.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it about has. I mean, because Stroman, right? That's an impact player. Suzuki, I think, has a ton of potential to get better.
Suzuki's the future.
And Yan Gomes. Yan Gomes ended up being a really, really good addition. And I think, I know people really bristle at this one, but as far as he's a better catcher, I'm not saying he's a better overall player, certainly not a better hitter. He is a better catcher and manager of the pitching staff than Wilson Contreras is.
Yeah.
Or
similarly to how you don't, even when pitchers were actually hitting, you didn't ever really sign a pitcher unless his name's Shohei Ohtani. Shohei.
Yeah.
Shohei. I got criticized for not pronouncing Shohei Ohtani's name properly in the comments there, and then I just made sure that everybody knew I don't pronounce anybody's name properly. But anyways, I mean, you didn't sign a pitcher so they could be a good hitter. And similarly, I think a catcher needs to be looked at in that same light, right? I mean, it doesn't, obviously they do bat, but so did pitchers. catchers do play more than pitchers do, and you do want some offensive output there. But at the end of the day, I think the real value of a catcher is how they manage the staff
Yep.
and how they call the games.
Yeah, and that goes beyond, I mean, we've seen, you had your video of the automated ball strike system there in the AFL that eventually will be coming to the majors, but that doesn't, a lot of people, framing. Okay, that's one part of catching, but it's knowing that opposing lineup, and it's knowing your pitching staff to know what they throw well, where they throw it well, and if you look at go set up with a Codify, and that's really active tweeter, but that is a system that provides for pitchers their heat maps of what pitches they need to throw where to what batters to have the best impact, and if you know that as a catcher. And it was not a coincidence that the Cubs pitching staff performed as well as it did during that time when Wilson Contreras was out and Yan Gomes was an everyday catcher. I felt like that staff performed much better.
They did.
It's not necessarily about framing, but it is about receiving, and it is about knowing how to help kind of bring those guys along, especially when you talk about younger pitchers coming in or maybe signing some new guys to come in. That we go back to it. That's part of the reason, even though I still think the Mets were dumb to have not added a bat like Contreras. I think there was a lot about, they were very skeptical about how he would integrate with that pitching staff, right? And not that it really mattered, because that's not what hurt them, but there's a lot to it. And I think the Cubs are seeing, so again, when we talk about intelligent spending, I do think that's a big part of why they won't be extending Wilson Contreras or didn't. I mean, it's a little bit late for that now. I suppose they could still, negotiate him with him for a week after the World Series, right? But they don't see that as necessarily being good money. And I understand it, as much as I know a lot of people won't want to hear that, as much as a lot of folks love that dude. I think if they can go and add offense in other areas, including from within as they promote, guys like Matt Mervis or whatever, the focus on the pitching staff is going to become that much greater. And I think they can make some improvements and make up for what they would lose in that regard. So
yeah, I mean, there are positions on the field where they contribute a significant amount towards defense, towards the strategy of the game, and then there are positions on the field where they are much more bigger contributors to offense, bats, like first base, for example. I mean, first base is yeah, obviously every position is difficult to play, but I would say in the infield, first is probably about the easiest position to play. And so that's why you've got so many power guys at first base, is because when you get your power guy that can play an infield position and he has a decent glove, but not great range, you put him at first. And so, yeah, but when you look at the Cubs offseason needs, and we've talked about it before, I mean, really, to me, the needs that they have is one, top of the rotation guy. We talked about Verlander. Two, third base for sure. And I mean, by that, I mean, and a lot of people aren't talking about this for some reason, is signing one of the shortstops that are out there and putting them at third. I think Nico should stay at short, but
I think Bogarts would be a huge. Bogarts would be, I mean, I don't want to say guarantee, but he's the one I'd move over to third if I went that route. But
yeah, you got to have that conversation with somebody coming in, I think. Because you could stick Morel or Madrigal at second base and be perfectly fine there. And then definitely a glove first center fielder, but you've got to have some offense there. But at the end of the day, you've got guys that are coming up through the system. So really you just want somebody who can play some off or some defense there for the first half of the season to get you in a position to compete hopefully for the NL Central. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think I fall right in there. That's something I wrote the other day. That I think if Mervis comes up, I'd love to see them go out, and that's part of the thing with Rizzo, where I think it's also not a great fit. Is he's also a left-handed hitter. There's no real platoon advantage there. He does hit lefties well, but I think somebody like a Jose Abreu who can come in as a right-handed batter. He's pretty platoon neutral. Again, can DH or play first base. You can pick it a little bit. That improves your first base. You sign one of those top middle infield guys, whatever you've got to do to maybe move them around one way or the other, you get that figured out. You go, as you mentioned, get the glove first center fielder. They had a lot of trouble with defense there. Depending on who you get, even if you do add a top of the rotation ace, you still have a ton of contact in that rotation, and I would love to see them strengthen the defense all the way up the middle, right? Short, second, center. Figure that out.
What I tell you what I'd love to not see is anybody suggest that Chris Morrell should ever play third base for the Chicago Cubs, because he's terrible at third. I don't know what people are thinking. Like, that's
Wisdom
a
was
terrible
not
idea.
good over there. Yeah, it's that's definitely an area. Third base, if they can, I mean, they just need to improve their defense, period. And that's one area where, like, if they were to go, let's say they traded for Shane Bieber, he's very similar in profile to a lot of the guys they've already got, right? Not a real hard thrower who gets tons and tons of strikeouts. He swings, he gets his share of swings and misses, but a lot of contact on the ground, that sort of thing.
And that's where Verlander just makes so much sense. I mean, the guy is ageless, you know. I mean, obviously, he's going to win the Cy Young. He's led the Astros to the World Series. I mean, this is not a guy you pass up on. This is to me like a John Lester signing, and obviously the ages are different and all those other things, but if you want to compete as the Cubs, I mean, adding basically the best pitcher in all of baseball is a guy you probably want to do.
Well, that would be Jacob deGrom, but the next bet would be Justin Verlander, who you could probably get cheaper, and there's some unrequited desire, I think, between both sides on that one to get it done. So we'll see.
Cool. Real quick, we're gonna take off here soon. World Series predictions.
Astros in 5.
Astros in 4. I think they're going to sweep them. I don't think it's going to be even close. I mean, it might be close. There might be a 1-run game in there.
I just want to see 5. I don't want the Astros to go completely undefeated through the entire postseason.
And if that happens, then free agency begins on November 6th, which would be Sunday, a week and a half from today, baby. Wild. That's our season.
Get it going.
All right, everyone, thanks for joining us today. We will be back next Wednesday if our schedules allow that to happen, and if not, it'll be Tuesday or Thursday. So we'll keep you guys posted. Until then, thanks for joining us.
Cool. See ya.
See ya.